Good afternoon, name is Valentina, and my plan today is to discuss localization of assortment on the basis of customer data. And here I'm primarily referring to the data that can and should be used to that end, and naturally application of AI in the same area. Naturally, when we talk about assortment and perception of price, these are obviously the key strategies used by companies in order to manage their customer loyalty, particularly in 2020. What we see, for example, here is that situation in Russia, as well as other countries, certainly has become more challenging with the onset of COVID-19. It is becoming increasingly more difficult for retail chains to compete. And like we said previously, it is important to understand how you want to stand apart from the competition. And therefore, price adaptation and assortment localization can play an important role. In fact, perception of prices and perception of assortment tend to be the key factors determining the choice of stores, grocery stores, I guess, although it doesn't say that clearly in the slide, by consumers. So what we see is that leading retailers are using big data analytics in order to optimize their assortments. And this works just nicely for them. Actually, this is why we are trying to bring this experience, this know-how into our projects. And we are assisting retailers around the world, including Russia. Based on what we see in this process of assortment planning, obviously, it's a convoluted, long process. We try to focus on this stage where assortment as such is being built, and it is at this stage that we can actually provide additional useful inputs to a particular employee in charge of this process stage. The person who actually decides how broad a particular category should be, what particular SKUs should it be made of, and so on. However, going forward, we can actually analyze the response of our consumers to a particular assortment in a particular store. Actually, at this stage, you can also apply AI, you can use smart data analysis in order to get additional benefits and to be empowered with additional tools for decision-making. As regards specific stages of this process, let me refer you to the screen. It all starts with clusterization of stores. Proper store clusterization supports better localization of your assortment, because that way you will be able to determine what makes certain stores different from the others and what are the special interests of the regular patrons of a given store. Next, we look at the decision tree, as we analyze the history of purchases made by our clients. We can actually hypothesize about how they made a decision to purchase a particular product, or which particular attributes of a given product mattered to them. This way, we should be able to identify customer needs so that we can best satisfy them in the next stage, which is the optimization stage, where we can use ML or AI, but also we can use demand forecasting tools in order to fully address this challenge of optimization and provide exactly the right SKUs for a particular assortment matrix. The effect of assortment localization can easily be achieved at a level of individual stores. But actually, you don't have to go to such a granular level. Look, for example, at, say, 3 to 5 clusters at the regional level. Even at that level of approximation, you will see some very powerful effects. Up to 80% of all the improvements can be harvested even at that level. This enables better understanding of the client, and on the other hand, it enables you to better manage your assortment. Because if you have assortment recommendations for each and every store, and this assortment matrices are unique for each and every store, this creates lots of operational challenges. After all, so many processes in retail are still requiring humans. So something simply cannot be localized at the level of individual store.
At the level of 3 to 5 clusters located in the same area, this approach proves to be quite efficient and customer-centric. Now let me tell you about the clustering or clusterization of stores. This is a multi-factor process because, first of all, we need to get insights on what is going on at the regional level. Russia is a huge country, and the demand is very non-homogeneous on so many levels. So we need to understand all the specific features of demand in this or that area. But even in the same area, there may be a lot of difference in demand between different stores. And this drives the allocation of shelf space and the location of different brands and different goods on store shelves, taking into account the price, segment, the purpose of that product, and many other characteristics. So here you can see the results of one of such clustering exercises. We identified 3 key clusters which were different, which had different demand properties. So, first of all, in the center of Moscow, where most of the offices are located, we observed many purchases of cooked meals and ready-to-eat products. This is basically when the office workers, during their lunch break, they rush to the supermarket to buy a meal that they won't have to cook. Then we identified 2 more very interesting clusters, which are very different in their demand properties. In the green cluster, buyers tend to purchase household goods and pet food more often, whereas in the red cluster there's more purchases of alcohol and tobacco products. Of course, there is a lot of seasonality to that. In our exercise, we analyzed the information, the data for the end of spring, early and the beginning of summer. This is when the May holidays in Russia are. And here, along the Mazhaiskaya highway, all the shops are clustered between those 2 different groups. On the left-hand side, the buyers would more often buy alcohol and tobacco, whereas on the right-hand side, they would buy household goods and pet food. And this is where we actually managed to capture the seasonality, because when people drive out of Moscow to a picnic, they buy alcohol and tobacco. And when they drive back into the city, they buy household goods and pet food, all those things that they might need in their city apartment. Which meant that we would have to adapt the assortment at this or that shop to the seasonality and to the cluster. At the next stage, we need to analyze what does this assortment mean for our buyers. What do they want to find in the shop, and how do they select the goods in a shop? So here we analyzed the receipts and the data from customer loyalty programs, because a customer loyalty program is an invaluable resource of information on what people buy and when, and why do they change their preferences. And it was quite easy to identify the buyer's loyalty to this or that product or to this or that brand. What actually drives the buyer's decision when they come to the shop? For that, we used the intellectual data analysis. Using the word-to-vec algorithm, we identified the implicit links between different products. Like, for example, in this slide you can see the relations between different product groups, and now we connect them into the customer decision tree. And at the first stage, we break them down into several clusters, and immediately we see three clusters. First of all, those products that would be purchased by the same buyer very often, those products that would end up in the same receipt, and then those products which were more frequently bought together with another product. At the next stage, we break them down into the next group. So this way we build the customer decision tree, and after that we try to get the insights as to the main attribute or to the main factor that drove this buyer's decision. So we identified that the brand name was the key factor here. So the first thing the buyer cares about is the brand, and only after that, they would pay attention to other features of that product. So with all this data and with all those insights, we were able to expand our assortment matrix to sell more of those products to the buyers, or differently from that, when we realized that we are quite limited in the physical shelf space, we can focus on those products that have the unique selling proposition to our buyers. At the next stage, we start forecasting the demand. Our demand forecasting system is based on ML technologies. Using machine learning, we try to forecast the future demand in the existing stores, and we can also try and predict whether this or that product would sell in a totally new point of sale. So this way we can address the overall optimization objective, through which we analyze the target function based on the results generated by the machine learning algorithm. So here we have this optimization algorithm with the target model built around KPIs with certain weights and with certain characteristics specific to this cluster of shops. And on the other hand, we have some limiting factors like the physical space limits, like shelf space, or branded displays, or some limitations on what can be displayed in the cash register area. Plus, there may be some analytical restrictions when we try to focus on a specific group of buyers, like those buyers who are into healthy food. For those, we would add an additional limiting factor that we want to sell. We must have this or that product on our shelves. Plus, the co-location properties, saturation of a specific category, and the shelf space. And then we run all the optimization methods to build the output assortment matrix for the cluster, for the group of shops, or for an individual shop. This allows us leveraging all this data even further and get additional margin from that, because, well, you know, analyzing data is a lot of fun in itself, but it's a lot more fun when there's a business result. So here we grow, we increase the revenue, and we get an additional margin. So with our client-centric assortment approach, we increase the revenue by 1 to 5% and increase the profit margin from not 5 to 2%. So this approach gives us lots of insights, lots of information, which allows localizing the assortment and adapting it to the needs of our customers. And we are already using this approach, and we would be happy to share it with our clients. Well, thank you so much for your attention.